we basically break each other's rules completely. We come at trading from a completely different perspective, and we both seem to get a certain amount of success doing it. So anything's possible. Be open-minded and try some new things.
Two traders, Darren and Walter, pull back the curtain on profitable trading systems, consistent money management, and profitable psychological triggers. Welcome to the Two Traders Podcast.
Welcome back to the Two Traders Podcast. I'm Walter here, and I've got Darren. Hello, Darren.
Hello, Walter.
So we've got a question here, Darren, about confidence in support and resistance. Let me read it for you. This trader says, I have a question about gaining confidence in my system and drawing support and resistance lines without doubting them. Now, there are a lot of things that pop out here, but I'm just curious, what is your sort of gut reaction to this, Darren?
I think it's right to doubt them because, they're not they're not a guaranteed thing. There's uncertainty with support and resistance, and, you can get the right level of support and resistance, but price just push a bit further than it normally would, and miss a trade, and sometimes it'll go down and stop you out and then reverse and go in your direction. And I think it's it's right to have some doubt in them. It's right to expect that they're not always going to work out, because then you can kind of focus a bit more on the things that do matter. And if you kind of focus in on drawing support and resistance lines that are always going to be right, then you're going to kind of miss the big picture.
Yeah, I think it's clear to me that this trader probably doesn't believe in support and resistance. So I would say that this trader probably has a belief that's somewhere around related to the way that you see the charts, Darren. And I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I just think that this is probably the wrong thing for this trader. It clearly sounds like the trader feels like it's important to use support and resistance, but the trader doesn't really believe in support and resistance. And I always say this, but it's so true. We always come back to our beliefs, and that's how we trade. So whether you're trading off support and resistance because you think that's the best spot, the support and resistance levels are the best spots to find trades, or whether you believe that really it's all about concentrating on the exits, as Darren is really, really focusing on the exits on his trades. He's not really the entries aren't that interesting. They're not that important. They're almost sort of just mechanical throwaway. Let's do it. It's another signal. And Darren makes his money on the exit. So I would say to this trader that clearly it sounds like to me support and resistance is not something you believe in. You don't have faith in it. You don't have confidence in it. So you need to switch to something else. There's got to be something else that's going to work for you. And we don't really know what it is because this is all the information we have. But that would be my guess.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, or maybe he needs to use support and resistance for his exit, or and not and use say price action for his entry. And I think sometimes if something's not working for you, like you say, it might be that it kind of is fighting against what you really believe, and it's quite hard to kind of pin that down initially without trying lots of things. So maybe he just needs to tweak his system a little bit and try something a bit different.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're listening to this, and that's a great point. So if you're listening to this and you think, okay, I've had a situation where I was trading a MACD system. If you hear yourself saying something like, well, I've noticed that every time it does this, it's likely to do that. So what you're doing here is you're pulling in a belief or an observation, something that you think that you've seen in the market. And when you say that, that's a tweak. That's what Darren's talking about. You're tweaking the system or thinking about tweaking a system that you've been trading out of the box because so-and-so trades it or whatever. I think that's a good sign. I think that usually if it comes up for the right reasons, in other words, it's not a good thing if that happens because you've had 5 losing trades in a row and you feel like it's time to tweak your system, the market's changed. I don't think that's necessarily a good reason to change your system. I think that the old excuse, the market has changed, I think that's used way too often, and I think it's often not true. What I mean by that is, yes, the market goes through different phases, and that's true, and your system may not survive as well, may not do as well when it goes through different phases, but that doesn't mean that you need to break down your system and throw it away or completely overhaul it. So what I would say is really think about the way that you're approaching your trading, and if you start to say things like, yeah, but I've noticed that it always does this, or but when this happens, it usually means that, or I really think that when I see this, I need to adjust my stop, or if these sorts of things are coming in to your thinking, then that means that's good. That means your beliefs are seeping into the system, and you need to incorporate those into your system. That's the only way you're going to trade it long term. You will not trade the system long term if it doesn't map onto your belief system. And I know that sounds crazy to some people because you think, well, I can just follow what so-and-so is doing because he's making money with it. Why don't I just do what he does? Well, the reality is that eventually you won't be doing what so-and-so does. In the end, you'll be doing what you do. And that's a good thing. So yeah, I would definitely try and figure out why it is that the support and resistance isn't working for you. Is it because you don't believe in it? Or maybe it could be used as an exit, as you say, Darren. Maybe there's something going on here. You feel like it's so critical that you must use it for whatever reason, which is obviously not true. Maybe moving averages are what you're going to use, or maybe just pure price action. There's so many different choices, but certainly it sounds like support and resistance is not really the thing that you would want to build your system around. It's like building your house on a sand dune. It's just not a good foundation given you're already questioning it at this level.
Yeah, and the tweaking thing, it's kind of got a negative thing around it, hasn't it? We're kind of told that you're not allowed to tweak, and I think that kind of boxes traders in, and they feel, maybe he's started learning support and resistance and feels that he has to kind of stay within certain notions and rules about what's right for support and resistance, and you can tweak it, like you say. We're told we can't use our emotions as well, and I think you've got to you've got to see what emotions are, if you're not feeling confident, that's for an emotional reason, and you need to discover why that is and find somewhere where you're comfortable trading, and to get there you have to tweak things and experiment and try things and come up with your own rules and your own ways of doing it.
I have a couple of questions for you, Darren. So have you, looking back, are there certain major tweaks that you've made to your systems over the years that you can point to and go, yeah, and then I started doing that. And then, for example, I gave up on the trailing exit and I started using, whatever. What can you point to?
With reference to support and resistance, when I first started trading support and resistance, I used to mark out swing points. Like we do, we look for where the market's turned around, and then I thought, well, hang on a minute, you have a swing point on every bar, so surely the high of the last bar and the low of the last bar are support and resistance as well. And then I kind of went on from there and said, well, okay, so there's support and resistance on every high and low, then if you go up a time frame, then that high and low should be more significant support and resistance than the ones contained within it, because for instance the low of a H4 bar, if H1s have trended down to the bottom of it and turned round, then that's stopped a H1 trend, if you like. So I started kind of grading highs and lows of individual bars rather than swing points. And if you look at a swing on your chart, if you have a look at a swing, a high and low where price turned around on, I'd say on a 60-minute chart, and then go and look at a daily chart of the same period, then you'll see it's just one bar with the resistance at the high of the day and the support at the low of the day. And that's just kind of something that I just kind of made up in my head, really, and that's how I traded support and resistance for a long time.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, and do you use your emotion? My other question is, do you use your emotions in your trading? I guess for the listener, what would be something that you could do in order to use your emotions in your trading? What would be something that you might suggest? I've got some ideas, but I'm just curious what yours might be.
I think the one that jumps to mind is now I can read myself when I'm feeling. This week, for example, when I was having a tough week, I could sense those feelings in me where I wanted to kind of go off plan. I wanted to change my management rules on the fly, if you like. So I'm in a trade and I'm thinking, well, I know I don't normally move to break even, but I think it's a good idea, and now I can I just recognize the feeling. It's like, okay, I'm getting that feeling, so pretty much anything I decide to do that's outside my usual plan is probably going to be a bad idea. And so it's just you get to the point where, right, I recognize this feeling and I know that it's going to lead me to make mistakes. So any decisions I make, just be extra careful, think them through, see if you're doing what you plan to do. And so it's kind of reading yourself, in effect.
Absolutely, and that seems to come up a lot in trading.
Something else that helps me is that I share my trades with other traders. So I post stuff on Twitter, I put stuff on the Naked Forex forum, and so I've kind of got that extra level of accountability. So when I'm getting those feelings as well, no matter how much I want to do it, I'm thinking, well, someone's going to pull you up on this and you're going to have to explain yourself later. And so kind of like not wanting to look bad because I'm sharing stuff with other people. So it kind of goes back to that thing of either having a trading buddy or being part of a forum, or I see some traders who keep detailed journals, and every day they post their chart with the entries and exits marked on, and and they're kind of putting themselves out there and laying themselves bare and saying, look, this is what I did with my trading today, and that kind of helps dealing with the emotions as well.
Yep. That sounds good. So you talked about how you had issues when you were in the fear, when you were in a drawdown, when you've had a few losers in a row. Does the opposite happen when you have a streak of winners? Is that something that you find yourself dealing with the emotions there, and you're trying to want to go off piste? As you said, when you had the losing streak last week, you kind of felt yourself being drawn to a new direction, which is off really your plan. Does the same thing happen when you're in a happy spot, in a greedy spot?
Yeah, and I'm actually much worse at dealing with that one. I'm much more likely to make a mistake on a winner than I am on a loser. So, for instance, if I'm having a losing spell, I'm much more likely to be able to read the emotions, deal with it, and stick to my plan, and that over the long term sees me all right. If I've just started the week and I've got some really big winners, and I'm much more likely to sort of pull out of a trade early and kick myself for it. And I still do that a lot, and it's one side of my trading I need to work on still.
Yeah, I think with emotions, really, these show up to me in the open positions. You can see this at a lot of brokers. They'll tell you what the open positions are, and I think that when you see, for example, 94% of the traders are long the euro or whatever it is, to me that's a really good barometer of where the market is. Is it in fear mode or greed mode? And it's usually not really in either one. It's usually somewhere in the middle. But you can use the same sort of barometer with yourself. If you're watching the charts and you're thinking, there's no way this is going to turn around, it's going to keep going up. The pound is going to keep going up. Look at how strong it is. Usually at that moment, I start trying to question, okay, now let's see. So I'm convinced that it's going to keep going up forever. Does that mean that this is the end? Because usually, and this is a good exercise. You can do this on the lower time frame charts. You can watch the 1 minute charts tick by, and when you get to that point where you think, okay, it's definitely in a downtrend now, see how often that ends up being the turning point. When you're absolutely 100% convinced that is where that's it. It's going to go down, 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 down. It might turn around there and go up. Now, this changes, I think, as you get more experience. But when you're certainly in the beginning, it's a really valuable tool that you can use, because your emotions can almost flag sort of what the market's doing, because you feel all of that fear when the it's not going to go down anymore. It's actually going to turn around here. And you feel all that greed when it's not going to go up anymore. It's going to turn around. Now, as you get more experience, I think it's sort of muted, and you start to lose that because you're aware of this sort of thing. But in most cases, I think if you're new to trading, this is a really valuable thing that you can use for those that, because sometimes at some point, like I remember thinking this, I don't know about you, Darren, at some point when you first start trading, you think, you know what, this is crazy. Why don't I just do the opposite of what I want to do, because I'm losing money so consistently? Why don't I just, the next time I say I've got a buy signal in the euro, why don't I just sell, and so forth? And these are the sorts of thoughts that I'm sure are not unique to my head. Did you ever think that when you were first trading?
Yeah, certainly, and that's why I use a system where the entry doesn't matter anymore. Because in my mind, it's the reason you're going wrong is probably not because you're picking the wrong entry, but when you get the right entry, you're probably making the wrong exits. That's the way I see it. So yeah, that's why I moved to pretty much any bar being an entry, and just teaching myself just to take the entries. Just keep, it's number one rule in my trading system: take all the entries, and you'll be okay. I mean, obviously you've got to make the right exit decisions as well, but you can structure that. You can have, at the bar close you have to do A, B or C, and then you make your decision, and then at the next bar close you do A, B or C, and you build a structured system, and that's one way of dealing with it.
Yeah, that's right. So really, I guess the message here is that we can use our emotions. They can be valuable for our trading systems. This is something that you can certainly do. You want to make sure that your beliefs match your trading system. And just because people say you can't tweak your system, you got to stick to your rules, you got to figure out what your system is, and then that's it. That's not necessarily true. I agree with Darren. I think you should embrace the changes that you make to your system. The caveat is, if you're always changing your system, there's something going on there, because you're not really settling in on something, and that may be part of the problem. But in general, what should happen is you get sort of a seed of an idea from somewhere, and then you build on that, and you create that system that fits your beliefs and really maps onto your beliefs. That's the way that you're going to be able to trade long term. So if you can come to grips with the fact that your beliefs are going to dictate how you trade, and you can incorporate those into your system, you have a chance at trading a system long term. But if you don't, if you're always fighting that, if you feel like you're doing the wrong thing because you're not trading exactly as Guru Trader Tom does or whatever, then it's probably that's when you might start spinning your wheels. So I would definitely encourage everyone here to question what they're doing or what they've been told by anybody, and make sure that you identify what your beliefs are and you incorporate those into your system. So if it's like Darren, where it doesn't matter, the entry isn't really that important, all the emphasis on the exit. If it's like me, where you say, look, I'm looking for those support and resistance areas that seem to pop up on the charts. If you're looking at price action patterns that you think are reliable, whatever it is, MACD, stochastic, I don't know, whatever you use, make sure that it makes sense to you, and that you're the one that's doing it, not that you're trying to copy somebody else. Really, that's going to be your ticket to long-term consistency, is to find something that really makes sense to you. So those are kind of my closing thoughts. What about you, Darren? Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think you summed it up perfectly, Walter. And the only thing I'd add is just look at me and Walter. We basically break each other's rules completely. We come at trading from a completely different perspective, and we both seem to get a certain amount of success doing it. So anything's possible. Be open-minded and try some new things.
Exactly. And don't let anyone tell you that you must do this. As soon as they say that you must do this to find profits and trade, I would just turn them off, walk away. Cool. All right. Thanks, Darren. We'll see you next time.
Okay, well, cheerio, mate.